Hello, everyone. Grant here again with another Gutter Growth podcast for you. Today, I'm joined by someone who's built something special down in South Carolina, Rob Word, owner of Holy City Gutter Works. Rob's company is pushing some pretty good annual revenue, and he's done it through a strong blend of systems, tracking the right numbers, and staying focused on operational execution. If you're serious about leveling up your business, this episode is for you. Hey, Rob, how you doing today, buddy?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So we want to just dive right into it. I've got to know you through you were at the event last year in Atlanta, and you're also in the Gutter Growth. We call it the family, right? And so we've been able to talk through some different meetings and outside of that. So I have a little bit of background about you, but let's just tell the viewers. You also recently just spoke at GutterCon. So I don't know if you're going to put that speech out for the public. Are you going to do something like that? I know we'll probably get it into the collective for those members, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I gave that. I think I'm like all of us. I experienced some things as I was building the business that I hope that no one else ever has to experience,
Right.
and that's literally what that talk was about. Is the things that I experienced and the mistakes that I made. Like, hey, don't make these financial mistakes because I made them. So yeah, I'll share it to the world, but the Gutter Growth group's probably getting them first, though.
Yeah, there we go. Well, let's do this. If you're interested in hitting up Rob and getting some education from him, he's got a wealth of information, like he said, probably about what not to do as well as what to do, as well as probably what you're learning as we're all growing through this life of business. Why don't you give us like the 90-second version of how Gutterworks got started?
So the 90-second version is I was working. So I was a house flipper in Virginia, and I moved to South Carolina.
Okay.
And got hired on by a very large gutter protection company. I'll let you infer who that is, but it's probably who you think it is. I worked for them for a year, and I just did not fit into the culture that they had built.
Yeah.
And frankly, I rage quit about a year into that. And I bought a gutter machine and a trailer because they 1099 all of their contractors. And at one point I thought I was going to be able to maybe do it on the side. Was just trying to figure out another way to, I needed to generate more revenue for myself anyway. But ultimately I quit and wound up just running my own trailer. And started it out of my garage and just put the nose to the grindstone, and here we are.
There we are.
8 years later.
Yeah. You've had a good journey. 8 years is a real good bout. You've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm sure you've had some fabulous weeks. I'm sure you've had some horrible weeks like the rest of us, right? Sometimes it trickles into a month. Talk to me a little bit, and I don't mean necessarily.
I've had bad years.
Yeah. It can happen, man. And I've definitely had. I tell people all the time when we're speaking, right? We speak of gutter business. We also speak of life. I've had a really good life in the gutter industry, but I've had some horrible years in my personal life.
Yeah.
Horrible decision making, just busting my head up against the wall for no reason, right? Having to learn things the hard way. And it can be like that in business as well. But compared to about a year ago, compared to now we were just talking off camera a little bit about the trials and tribulations of dealing with either economic impact or the weather or any other foreseen things. But weather, holidays, that whole season from, I think you said Thanksgiving till beginning of spring.
The doldrums.
Well, tell us a little bit about that, what you were going through. And did you go through it the year before as well? Is it kind of consistent?
Yeah, I think everybody deals with, and I guess maybe I say everybody, but even those of us we don't get snow. So our seasonality is different than you'll see up north. We're not battling snow, and I understand, like, God bless those guys that have the ability to battle working through snow. For us, our seasonal cycle really kind of occurs around holidays and maybe even some school holidays. For us, one of the things that we deal with is, from that area between Thanksgiving all the way through New Year's, it's the holiday season. So a lot of commerce kind of shuts down. We're a need, not a want. So a lot of purchasing for gutters really falls back to the wayside during that time. We have been growing to the point where, we had maybe non-essential people in place helping us do a better job of tracking metrics. Some of that stuff we needed people in place to track manually because none of our CRMs did it. We really wanted the visuals to it. And we hit that like November space all the way through December. Really, it kind of dragged out past New Year's. Income kind of fell off a cliff. And we burned through backlog pretty quickly. So we were starting to get to the point where, we were within 1 or 2 weeks. And we didn't have a lot of choice of what we could do. So it was like, whatever we had to do. And we had to make tough business decisions and scale back our operations, like at least the non-essential operations, back to just kind of our core unit between our sales and our install. And I think that's like the worst job as an owner is to get rid of people that you like and that you want and that are actually helping, do great things for the business and have future opportunity there. But the other hard part is like we have a business to run, and it has to perform a certain way in order for it to be worth it.
We were talking about that off camera, right? Specifically how the families of the employees sometimes are more dependent on the actual systems and processes of the company to provide for their family, meaning to provide longevity, a career, a tenure, whatever, for their husband or their wife, etc. And we feel that as business owners when it's time to scale back a little bit. I'm not going to share your financials here, but I was looking at our end of the year discussion for last year, and you're doing well over 7 figures. And how are you feeling? I know you put that reach goal out. How are you feeling this year? What's your initial thoughts after getting through the tough Q1? Because Q1s can be tough if you don't come out swinging.
Hi, my name is Archie, and I don't want this, or this to cause unexpected damage to your home.
Prevent unexpected and costly damage from clogged gutters. Protect your home with One Gutter Guard, the trusted solution for gutter protection. Call us today to schedule your free gutter inspection and estimate.
And the marketing work that this is actually the first year that we had put together a full marketing calendar for the year. And we finished it like October, November-ish. So it didn't really kick in until January.
Yes, sir.
Which was what hurt is that like November, December, like where we didn't have it. So we were kind of behind the 8 ball to start with. We are on pace. We're a little behind the actual number, and it's not because everything else hasn't fallen into place. We're behind the number because we're short on personnel. We had a plan to have another salesperson up and running and more crews up and running, and we just got the salesperson onboarded, and we're still finalizing the crews. But the fortunate part is, from a pace standpoint, we've got another plan for another crew to expand to another crew about June. So if those two fall into place, as we're expecting, the numbers are going to stay the same. We're just kind of shifting. The revenue is going to be higher towards the end of the year than it is right now.
Absolutely agree. I want to touch on that pace comment you have. For a lot of our viewers, they may or may not know that you played baseball, and you played baseball down here in Florida. I think you were part of the Marlins program. And
yes, sir.
think also, so what is it, semi-professional, another league as well? You've been in baseball for many years.
Yeah, it's minor league ball. So I went from college at University of Virginia and then was drafted in 2002 by the Marlins, and I bounced around there. They call it the farm league, the farm system. So it's, from single A all the way up to triple A. Bounced around in that for several years.
John B is huge baseball fan. He also plays baseball. You guys are going to have a conversation.
I love it. Yeah. I can't believe we've never touched on that before.
Yeah. I wanted to mention your comment about pace, right? It's because correlate that maybe to your experience in sports and maybe certain coaching style or something that you learned from team sports, that you do have to have a pace, that first or second inning might not have anything to do with the entire game plan, right? Talk to us a little bit about that.
It's even like a season. The professional baseball seasons, whether it's minor league or big leagues, it's 162 games, right? And if you want to make it into the postseason, you have to have a certain amount of winning during the year. But really, if you want to peak and do really well, you need to peak during the postseason. When it all starts to matter, when you start getting into like the big games and want to keep playing.
Okay.
I would say business is very similar, but for us, we're going to want to peak when the season peaks, right? And for those of us in the gutter industry, it's probably typically mid-year, maybe in the summer, but really in the fall too, when leaves start to fall, especially in the South. So for us, that's part of what we look at is we have to prepare to take advantage of really like the most valuable times a year. And so from a pace standpoint, if we're already in peak season and we're just starting to look at hiring people now, it's too late. By the time that they get in, it's going to be too late. And, you're going to have a crew that's not going to be able to produce enough revenue to keep you going. But I think the other side of it too is, just like in sports, first or second or third inning, some of the things that you're doing in the first quarter or the first couple of months of the year that may not be working, you have plenty of time to shift your strategy in order to take advantage of the rest of the season. You just have to be aware of if it's working or not. I think, that's the learning lesson that we learned along the way is, the better we're tracking our KPIs and metrics throughout, we do a lot of them weekly, some of them daily.
Yes.
That, the better understanding we have of that, the quicker we can quicker we can pivot and make better decisions to take advantage of the rest of the year.
I love it. Corey J's the Smoke Stack barbecue supply store right there, man. I got to go hang out with that dude. He's something else in the gutter industry and in the barbecue industry. So we wanted to talk about KPIs today and some tracking and some systems. I noticed right off the bat that you were talking a little bit about calendaring your marketing, right? And that's something we talk about in gutter growth. And it's really important to set the pace, not like try to figure out where you are in the pace. Is there a pace? And I think that that's something you've experienced over your years is like sports or business. We got to track stuff. How many times am I missing? How many times am I hitting? How many? All those things, right? What have you found is different now that you're tracking those things? And it's going to be obvious than when you first started off and you weren't.
Well, I think when you first start, you just throw stuff at the wall and hope it sticks. And I think for us, one of the things I never thought we'd be in a situation. So we ran an event this year is one of our first, big show events. And before we went to the event, we talked about, all right, the marketing spend and the percentage that we wanted it to be and the number of leads that we needed to get in order for this to meet the correct percentage of the expense for our marketing and make it all kind of fall in line. I never thought, nor did I think, we could set the number of leads we needed a month in order to hit our goals for the year. It really moves from like a man, I hope whatever we're doing brings in enough people and we sell enough to make more money, kind of where you're playing from behind. You're looking at it, all of your revenue numbers are like, well, this is what we did for the year. And this is because like, whatever we spent
Yeah.
generated this. Now we're looking at it as, well, this money we're spending should generate this. And from this, we should be able to close 40% of it, which should generate this amount of revenue. And our crew should be able to do this much in a year.
Yep.
It feels a whole lot more engineered than it used to be.
Engineered. I love that. And
Mhm.
you can facilitate your year, especially in your third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and you start to gather some data and you know what those trends are, right? And
Mhm.
you can remember the trends, but if you have them on paper or in your CRM, if you have them documented,
Mhm.
you can go back and look at them with your team as your team starts to grow, and you can kind of see what your team thinks too. And when your team starts to give input, let's say it maybe be an assistant manager, general manager, the sales guys, whatever, and they go, yeah, the last couple of years I sold X, Y, and Z, and I had better months during this time, and I'd like to make sure that my chunk of the goal is expected in those months as well, because we know I'll be
Mhm.
that way we're setting them up for success, right? Not epic failure and emotional disaster and no
Mhm.
money, etc. But we can't do
But
that
what's
off of a whim.
Yeah, what's nice too though is, once we have these, let's call them like, they're earmarked. That's maybe the pacing is we
Mm-hmm.
know for a fact if we have these numbers set. And for us, we have a level 10 meeting that we have every Tuesday morning where we're tracking stuff by the week.
Yes.
And it's so that, if something is off for more than 1 or 2 weeks, we can raise our hand and say, okay, what is going wrong and what needs to change? Because before it was like, we'd look at it quarterly or maybe half a year, like, hey, why are we behind pace on all this stuff? Um, so it's the questions that we ask are different, and then the fixes are a little bit less like massive. We're not having to make massive overhauls in our system. We're just going back and either tweaking and making sure that like, we're blocking and tackling or pitching and catching correctly, if you will.
100%. It's harder to fix something once it's way off track, right? That's
Hmm.
why we talk all the time about those weekly meetings, 2 a week if we need to, one with the whole team, a
Hmm.
level 10 with the higher experienced employees, whatever that needs to look like. Talk to me about whether it be one or two systems that you truly feel changed the game for you, whenever they were in your last 8 years. Like, man, when I did this, it was like, oh my
Hmm.
God, can't believe I didn't do it.
Man, I think this is a weird one, but um, I personally I took myself out of hiring because
Mm,
um, I have a tendency to see, it if I have a need, every person solves it. Like if they walk in the door and I will see the potential in every person, regardless of whether or not they see it themselves. But
yeah.
we went and we worked on systemizing our interview process. Um, and then, kind of built an entire like our hiring process is pretty involved. And what we found is, once we leaned into that and really pushed everybody through it, like our interview system we have now, if I interview them or my director of operations Matt interviews them or Casey interviews them or our sales manager does it, like all of our interview scores should wind up within the ballpark of each other because we standardize the questions and we have, it's like a 1, 2, or 3 on the questions, and we're looking for specific things that are said and
Yes.
if the scenario is real or imagined.
Okay.
uh
Okay.
Interview will come in and they will, you'll give them a scenario and either they will make one up and and it's like, if I were in this situation I would do X, Y, and Z versus, oh yes, I did this and I did X, Y, and Z. The actual experienced, we're looking for the actual experience, and it gets a higher score than the theoretical, if I were to have done this. And then we get plus or minus, they get a plus or minus a point on whether or not it's a positive or a negative.
Okay. So you're
um
scoring them on that. I love that.
yeah, because so we based it all off of, there's a book called Hiring for Attitude. um And if you haven't read it, it's great. And I think what we learned along the way that, as our business has grown, is we realized that we're actually a training organization. And that's been the evolution. When I started, we were a customer service business fronting as a gutter company. Now we're a training organization fronting as a gutter company. And so we try and find the people that fit inside the culture that are going to be great teammates, because we can teach them the rest.
Yes.
Basement flooding, roof leaks, mold.
No. I have to clean the gutters.
Go back to sleep, honey. We installed one gutter guard.
Prevent unexpected and costly damage from clogged gutters. Protect your home with one gutter guard, the trusted solution for gutter protection. Call us today to schedule your free gutter inspection and estimate.
Yes.
And so we do that interview process, and then we have, some actual metric-based testing that they take, which, I'll be perfectly frank with you, part of the reason we do that is because we just want to see if they're going to do it or not.
Yeah.
And we grade them on how quickly they get it done, not what their score is.
Okay.
Because, if you don't have to ask anybody to get it done and they get it done quickly, they're fairly likely to get it done quickly, inside of the business too.
I like that.
And then we background check and drug test everybody. That was probably the biggest white knuckle experience, because we just didn't know what was going to happen or what we were going to get. But suddenly I have an organization full of, even the young people are, very responsible. And I would say that, that's the biggest game changer, is I stopped having to look for people that could get stuff done. Frankly, I hired every junkie and opiate addict in Charleston at one point because they had a pulse and they showed up for the interview.
Yeah.
So for me, that's been the biggest game changer, because now I have, a team full of adults that, like, I don't have to expect, I don't have to question whether or not they're going to show up.
Yeah, they're there looking for a career, not a job, right? That's what you start to find out when you change up that interview system. I was going to ask you about a system that you tried to build, but I think you just kind of answered that right there. I like that your two answers were much different than other people's. And that shows me where you're looking in the business. I like that. And you said that you were struggling a little bit in this past season, right? Of having to, scale down a little bit. And so you're really in the season of honing in, making sure that it's important to you to take care of your people, but not only that you're bringing the right people in. We talk about that in gutter growth, right? That culture, protecting the culture, having the culture champion. I'll segue just a little bit into, what does it feel like, or what is it like being a part of that gutter growth family?
I think it's great. I think there are guys in there that are just starting their journey out. And I remember when I was in that situation, like the first 2 or 3 years in, man, I was like a lost puppy. Because I think you get you first get out there and realize, well, people are going to buy stuff from me. But then you also, somebody in every market seems to be the guy that somehow, like, you show up in the market and everybody charges the same thing because some guy arbitrarily set the price for the market. I was building a different business and not charging enough. And I think a lot of guys in the gutter growth group are experiencing the same thing. They got into the industry and it's like, well, everybody charges $8 a foot. But then you realize the guys that are charging $8 a foot aren't hiring customer service admins, aren't putting salespeople in the field. Like, you want what's great about the gutter growth group is they're supportive, from the small guys all the way through the coaches. Chris is a great sales ambassador, and he is doing something different than everybody else, right?
Yeah.
It's super impressive. And not only that, like, innovation, I think, is one of the things that has kind of been lacking in our industry for a while, is, people doing things differently. Like, And I also think, having a collective knowledge base is massive, because if you think about it, like, everybody else learned to hang gutter from somebody else.
Yes.
And they learned how to run their business from somebody else. And regardless of whether or not it was the right way, they just learned it from somebody else. That's why it's so hard to hire gutter guys with experience, is because they learned it another way and they don't want to learn it any other way.
I completely agree with you on that.
It's a very supportive family. We may be one of the larger companies in it, but I find a whole lot of value in it, and I also appreciate helping where I can help in there. There are guys that I've met there that have reached out, and I've been able to help on the side too. So, it's valuable for everybody to be a part of a group.
I think it's exciting too to watch people like yourself, like myself, right? Just come in with a wealth of knowledge, but we have to hold ourselves to a little bit higher standard, right? If we want to help others. So while I'm in here learning from John Majak on how to run a business, my partner, right? I got some of this gutter stuff figured out, but this business stuff, it's like I'm learning from Tim and John and you and Chris and Tom Anthony, Corey J, Tina, all these people, right? Why wouldn't I want to be a part of that group? Even if it's like, we don't need to worry about installing gutter or hiring, but I need to know my KPIs. Well, we got a plethora of people you can sit down and you could talk KPIs for one straight year with the amount of code. Let's talk some KPIs. So what KPIs do you like to review weekly, monthly, or quarterly? What's your kind of, everybody has their top couple.
Yep. So weekly, we dive more into, we keep track of sales weekly. We keep track of installation revenue weekly.
Yep.
We actually keep track of installation revenue daily.
Good.
So we have a daily huddle every morning that goes through installation tracking. But obviously, kind of our earmark for it is by the week. And guys are bonused on it by the month.
Yep.
We also keep a running total of like our year-to-date installed revenue.
Yep. So we're looking at the annual.
Yep. We keep track of, on a monthly basis, and really this is probably more of a weekly basis. We keep track of our backlog.
Okay. Yep. Good.
Waiting to install, and that's really kind of just to tell us if our sales is outpacing our installation, or if our backlog gets too small, what happens is we wind up having trouble scheduling for revenue.
Absolutely.
Because we'll have. Okay.
No, let's touch on that real quick. Let's break that down for some of the viewers that are a little bit more owner operator. What are we talking about when we're looking at our backlog there and our sales outpacing our installation? Sometimes I'll talk to a newer guy in the industry and he says, man, I'm trying to sell 15,000 a week so we can install 15,000 a week. And I'm like, man, you need to get past that, your goal. And we start talking about the goals, right? Well, yeah, of course you want to sell the 15. You want to sell a little buffer. You also want to sell that buffer into the next year, right? Because you don't want to, oh man, and it's just something small that I had to be taught to, like, oh no, yeah, that makes sense, right? Making sure that you're outpacing with your sales, outpacing inflation. So you guys are going to want to make sure you're setting your goals a little bit higher. Let's talk about that. January, February, probably going to be a little slower if you're not somewhere like maybe Texas or Florida. So let's say hypothetically you want to have those months a little lower. You could even have certain weeks a little lower because they have holidays or something built into them. And you got to push and you got to calendar your marketing. I think Tina did the last meeting on that, or maybe it was her and Corey J. But there's so much value in playing ahead versus from playing behind, right? And that's what the KPIs will tell us. What are you using for CRM wise over there, if you don't mind me asking? So
we use AccuLynx as our CRM. It is a roofing software.
Yep.
The fortunate part is that I get paid by them. So I would encourage, it is very expensive for a gutter management tool.
Yeah.
it's powerful and there's a lot you can get out of it. However, it's also really expensive. The hard part about it is we have attempted to make the shift out of it. And if you've ever been a part of a CRM transition,
that is a lot of data, and you like almost want to close down for a couple of weeks because there'll be missing information.
7 years. Yes, I got 7 years in here. And not only that, it is also a massive shift in, I mean, a decent amount of our systems have been kind of built off of this is how we can get this information out. So we are going to move, but it's going to be a far more strategic move when, we're not in.
And do it in that off season, probably, right?
Yeah.
What are you looking at? Drip jobs? Do you know?
So we've looked at drip jobs. We've looked at Jobber. I think what's hard is AccuLynx actually has a really good back end side for production.
Mm-hmm.
So we see, I think what's hard is that's one of the things that we've had a hard time unmarrying from, is because the production management side and the ordering system inside of AccuLynx is really robust, and we haven't found an equal swap for it. So I think that was one of the, Jobber's marketing and front end is a whole lot better than AccuLynx's is. AccuLynx has a weak marketing.
Is going to be more robust, like Service Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what you're talking about, and it's like, hey, at the end of the day, if you're just going to go to another expensive CRM that you got to spend all this time learning, and then besides the learning, like you said, the integration and switching over all your customers, and sometimes that integration will lose you data, whatever it may be, all the addresses or all the pricing or all the photos or whatever the heck it is, right? So, that's a big change, but at least you're using one and you're tracking stuff.
I mean, AccuLynx has our information kind of hijacked.
What's that?
The AccuLynx has our information kind of hijacked too. Like when we told them we're interested in moving, they were like, "Well, we asked can we offload all this stuff?" And they were like, "No." Okay then. 8 years worth of data I can't let go of in here too.
Yeah, and you don't want to, because, like you said, there's other systems that are, whether it be Hatch or SendGem or just all these little things that are already tied in. Maybe it's not worth it, but at least you're using a CRM. Talk to me about, is there anybody on the team that's responsible for KPIs? I want to preface the KPI diagram I put in the vault. And as you can see there's 18 KPIs, and there's all of the metrics and the recommendations, and making sure that the owner is not the only one tracking all the KPIs. How are you doing with that, Rob?
410. Sorry, my son's walking out the door. 410, buddy.
Yeah.
So we actually divide that out based on, our acting sales manager is responsible for reporting the sales numbers. Our production manager is responsible for reporting production numbers. And I say responsible for it. We have that level 10 meeting every week. So between our operations manager and our office manager are reporting financial data. Sales guys or our sales managers reporting all the essential sales data from the previous week. And our production managers reporting all the production data from the previous week.
Love it.
So it all gets cut, they're all responsible. They have a timeline in which it's due. So they're all in by 5:00 on Monday for our level 10 on Tuesday morning. And then I am responsible for the monthly data. We also have a meeting once a month we call it the TQM. It's Total Quality Management Meeting.
Okay.
It's really more of a gross profit meeting. So we take every job we sold for the month and go through and confirm all of our gross profit numbers were correct. Because, one of the things that they say the easiest way to, for a business to be successful is to manage, the gross profit. And that's, their gross profit number.
Yep.
And so we go through and look at every single job and earmark it. If it's below our gross profit goal, we go in and pick it apart and figure out, what went wrong, whether the material was high or we undersold it, or if we had to go out and do, multiple install visits. And that's kind of more of a collective group because, the sales team puts the sales information and the sales commissions in there. And then half of us are going in and, having to go individually throughout the jobs throughout the month and put the material in. Like we can get a gross number of material and labor, but we go in and split them apart. So the problem is with AccuLinks, it's a manual entry. So we got to go in there and manually enter it into the system. But then we all sit in the room and discuss how all that went.
How do you get the buy-in from the team? And is that through the accountability that comes from them having to do the reporting versus you doing all the reporting and people just kind of sitting, listening to a bunch of reporting from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of their ownership. If we're a sports team and you're the offensive coordinator to the defensive coordinator, those are the numbers that are most important to you because you want to be able to come to the table and say, man, my team is kicking ass this month and look, this is how it looks.
Yes.
I'll readily admit there was a period of time where everything went off field. Like, man, everything feels like it's going really well right now. But, financially, the financial numbers don't always line up with the installation numbers or the sales numbers because, if we're doing a bunch of installs for general contractors, that's a good probably 40% of our business now.
Okay.
Those can have, that can have a 30-day lag time in terms of money. So the installation team may be kicking ass. But
doesn't
the money
mean the AR is going to be looking too hot.
Exactly. So, that's why we have those things separated is because we can look at, in our TQM or in our level 10 meeting, we talk about, the job length, the average time between sale and install. And then we separated it as we started to learn these things because our contractor jobs were nuking like our non-contractor jobs. It's looking like everything took 70 days when, our homeowner jobs were taking, 10 days and our contractor jobs were taking 70 days. So I think everybody has kind of bought in on it because everybody can really see how their department is doing. But then our bonus structure within the business for everybody is tied to like everybody's performance of
their ownership of
piece.
Their ownership of that part of the business, right? What's the book, podcast, or resource that has impacted your business the most? And probably meaning impacted you, but that might be a separate issue. There probably was a book or something that impacted your life the most. But I'm curious, what's the resource, book, or podcast, or whatever it is, spiritual awakening that's impacted your business the most over the past couple of years?
So we were members of CCN, which is the Certified Contractors Network, prior to joining Gutter Growth.
Okay.
CCN is essentially like the Gutter Growth group, but for like larger roofing, siding, windows, and doors companies.
Correct.
It's it's been around for like 30 some odd years, but there is a coach in there by the name of Charlie Gindell.
Okay.
And Charlie Gindell wrote a book called Lessons Learned. And about 4 years ago, I went to the Accelerate conference, which is Brian Kaskavalcian's conference. He's the guy that wrote the 7 Secrets of the Wealthy Contractor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's in fact, it's in Orlando, so it's just up the street from you. But like Brian Gottlieb speaks at it. That's where I heard him speak the first time. Charlie speaks there. A lot of like heavy hitters within the home improvement industry.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's probably like of all conferences I've been to, that one has the most heavy hitters with a whole lot of actionable lessons. But I my business was literally a burning ship, just heading for disaster. And our gutter protection partner is Micro Mesh Gutter Guards. It's Master Shield,
Yes.
Clean Gutter. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been one of their contractors for 7 years, and they had a deal on tickets to this conference. And so I went to this conference, and I paid extra. And mind you, I went thinking like my business is tanked. I'm just going to meet some other people. Maybe I'll find another job while I'm there.
Right.
I stayed extra, and I heard Charlie Gandell speak for the day. It was a growth seminar, but it was literally like, this is how you should be running your business. And it was the single most impactful day. In fact, when I send you my GutterCon talk,
Okay.
I talk very specifically about that moment, because I went to that conference thinking my business was like in the trash and I was going to find something else to do, to coming home from that conference, spending 4 days locked in a room, doing the most comprehensive pro forma I have ever put together in my life, given to me by like, as an additive to Charlie's book, and single-handedly turned my business around like in 6 months.
Fabulous to hear. Way to go, Charlie and Rob. Awesome.
So, and
it's
Charlie
great
was
that you're able to key in on it too, because things will happen in our life and we don't understand how important they are. We might later, but when we can live in that moment and build a foundation off of that particular moment of success, I think it can be really huge for us.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I went home from that conference and I raised my prices 40% overnight.
There we go.
Yeah.
What's one system that you would never give up? Like if you had to give up a couple things, what's the one thing? I'll just say it would be a CRM.
Oh, like 100%.
I mean, that's just one huge thing that solves. There's a lot of people, and everyone starts, I mean, without a CRM, but that is the biggest game changer in my opinion.
100%. I mean, without a CRM, like nothing exists in our business without it. We actually make the joke, if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You got
communication wise, money transfer wise, service management wise. Like I actually don't know how anybody can do it, because it's the one source of truth, man. You can always go back and figure out what happened.
Do you have a personal KPI?
Yeah, I think my personal KPI is I've really honed in the last year. Well, I don't know. I mean, this is maybe still a business KPI, but when I started, net profit was, I kind of felt like it was a dirty word, right? Because when you run your business and, I'm sending all these guys out to do installs, and I'm sending all these other guys to do my sales, I know how hard that work is. We know how hard that work is. I've climbed the ladders. I've sweat. In fact, I still do it maybe more often than I'd like to, but I was always afraid that, me earning a profit outside of the business as a business owner was going to look like I was greedy in some way. And I heard somebody at a conference say, listen, the net profit of a business is the business's paycheck. And if your business is not healthily net profitable, then you are always on a sinking ship. And so I keep very tight tabs on our net profitability. And it's really at this point because I'm very competitive. And I feel like one of the things that I can compete on, by having a really good, I want to run a business better than everybody else. And it's like, it starts at net profit, and it's not because I'm trying to, steal a bunch of net profit from people. It's, I want to be able to sleep at night knowing that I've taken care of my customers, I've taken care of my employees, and that the business, is ultimately earning a profit that I am going to take part in at some point.
Perfectly said. Absolutely. Rob, it was a pleasure to have you on here today. I hope to see you again in more ways than one over at the Gutter Summit this September.
Yes, sir.
4th, 25th, and 26th. Final words of advice for anybody up and coming. We usually get about 3,000 to 5,000 views on these podcasts. And a lot of them are people that are ex-installers just starting their business, and they're going to lean on this. If you could tell them anything, this one focus, just going out to you new seamless gutter business owners, what piece of advice would you give them, Rob?
Find a mastermind group.
There we go.
Preferably the gutter growth group, because if you're a seamless gutter installer, that's going to be the most specific and actionable group that you can join. But find a mastermind group, and do not be afraid to like spill your guts out to them. Don't feel like you got to go in knowing anything. Everybody has something they're not good at. I can give you the laundry list of things we're not good at. And I can also give you the laundry list of things that we have done really well. But that's the only way that you can solve those problems is by having people tell you how they fixed it, how you survived this. How did you survive this? Well, this is what I did.
Yeah, it is. I mean, community-based for sure is fabulous.
Most powerful thing you can do is have people to reach out to.
Any one last book that you would recommend to anybody? You did recommend us 2 books here, Lessons Learned by Charlie and 7 Secrets of a Wealthy Contractor. You just leave it at that? Or is there something else, maybe a little more beginner?
You know, I consume a lot of content. The Beyond the Hammer, Brian Gottlieb's book.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Is probably like the best for somebody with, you know, an organization where they are now like eventually culture becomes kind of the cornerstone in which the rest of your business exists off of.
Yeah.
And that's a great book for that. But I lean on, when I was learning how to run the numbers and financially manage the business, I read a book by Greg Crabtree called Simple Numbers.
Okay.
It's a little different. I think the construction world should exist in accrual accounting. That's like, I think one of the big lessons that I like to teach a lot of people is the construction world, home improvement world should live in accrual accounting, because your expenses for your jobs don't always align with your months.
Yep.
So the only thing that Greg Crabtree and I don't agree on is that he believes you should be in cash until you're above $5 million.
Okay.
But there is a whole bunch of simple financial management tactics in that book. It is written by CPA for entrepreneurs. I would say that, and I would also pair that very closely with the Profit First for contractors, or Profit First. Like, just because the hardest part, especially when you're out in the field or running a truck or out doing installs, like, you're not going to be, you know, camped in front of your QuickBooks, you know, allotting all of your expenses and keeping track of them that way. Yep. The Profit First is kind of the first thing where it's like, okay, if you're moving these things, then you'll know whether or not your expenses are aligning with how your business is operating. And, you know, between Lessons Learned, Simple Numbers, and Profit First for Contractors, like, those are the 3 books that like gave me enough understanding of our finances and our business to not feel like I was running us in the ground anymore.
That's fabulous. Well, I'm going to leave it with that. I pulled a couple off the shelf, but
yeah,
I'll save those.
What you got? What you got? Tell me what you got.
Okay. I love books. Slight edge here. John Majak, actually, I didn't know who sent it, but I found out. He did bring it up in one of our level 10 meetings. We have these wild level 10 meetings that consist of a whole bunch of companies. We try to jam a little bit of all of it into, but he brought this up and then I forgot. So he sent this over, which is turning simple disciplines into massive success and happiness. And then I just went out to Pittsburgh and hung out with Chris and Tom Anthony last weekend. Yeah, I always grab a book or 2 in the airport. So I got Sales Strategies for the Unleashing the Power of AI to Save Time, Sell More, Edge, and Crush the Competition by Jeff Blount. And then More Human here, how the
Mhm.
power of AI can transform the way you lead. I'm still not in love with AI. Sure, it helps write some papers. I'm writing a lot of documents
Mhm.
right now. AI gives this really bland, boring listature, but
Mhm.
I'm letting it aid me in some of these massive documents I'm working on that I really want to make sure, all the leaders building leaders, and
Yeah.
every document I built there in the vault coincides with another and references another document, which I think
Mhm.
is getting really powerful as I'm starting to get into some of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's outside of gutter growth. I mean, that's just the way we're going in life. And one thing I learned really a lot over the past decade was like, you don't know what you don't know, but you don't have to
Mhm.
not know it. You do not have to not know it. And for so many years, just hanging gutters, I was like, well, I'm just kind of a gutter installer. And then eventually I started taking more pride when people asked me what. I was like, no, I install gutters. Like, and I make 100K
Mhm.
plus every year doing that. And I don't
Yeah.
work a lot. I drive a lot, but I actually don't work a lot. And I love what I do. It's clean. And then it was like, well, and that's all I know is gutters, 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 gutters. So I
Mhm.
want to just continue to absorb all this information. And the other cool thing here, just share it really quickly. It's got to be in one of these books. For you guys that don't know, I'm sure a lot of people do. When you travel and you go to these airports and you buy these books, some of them will just let you bring them right back in. So if you spend,
Yeah, you can
30
swap
bucks
them
on
out.
the book, boom, they'll switch you up. And a lot of them will get you 40 or 50% off when you bring the little bookmark back in. So you can get a lot of these books really for next to nothing.
Man, I bought that Amazon. I have like that Amazon a Kindle, and I have like the Kindle Unlimited or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, I probably read. I think this year alone already, I've pushed through like 25 books.
That's awesome.
Well, a part of that too is if I'm not reading it, I have the Audible with it.
Yeah.
If I'm not
Yes.
reading it, I'll listen to it while I'm
Oh, that's the
driving. But
best.
some of
Last
that's
year, I
guilty.
last year I did a crap ton of audibles because I was working so far away and it made sense. And then one day, for me, I was driving home. And this was, about 9 months ago, a year ago. I was driving home. I was listening to something, and I realized I wasn't really listening.
Mm-hmm.
I was cheating myself. I was like, man, I'm just trying to knock out books. Let's get realistic here. The phone would ring in between. I'd answer it. Then semi would be next to me really loud, or someone would
Mm-hmm.
wave, or I was like, I'm not really doing myself in that particular moment a service. And so I stopped with the audibles, and I said, man, if you're going to read for about the next year, I need you to really read them, Grant. I want you to
Mm-hmm.
really read them. And that was right around the same time I read this book.
Yep.
I got to shout out John. I recommend everyone read this book because it's not just about business. It's about pushing yourself to know if you should be in business. And once you get there, how to stay there and win and serve. And that book right there is it absolutely is the most powerful book that I've read in the past couple of years. And if not one in my life, because the story and the journey that he goes on in that book, and how he talks about being able to ring the bell, to serve, to win, to honor,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff, I think is just really huge. I'm so blessed to just be partnered with this guy and learn from him. He's really cool.
Yeah, you got him all the time. I only get him in small chunks, but
I wish I
he's
had him all the time. I'm partnered with him, but I definitely don't got him all the time. He's doing a lot of stuff, but I do. I often am in really powerful meetings with him correcting. He corrects me a fair amount. And I like that because he's one of the few people, Tim as well, me and my partners do, but like there's not a lot of people standing around me correcting me. And
Mhm.
I'm cool. I'm good with correction. I grew up reading a lot of Proverbs, so I'm good with the correction. It's exciting. Rob, it
Yeah.
was
I
exciting
mean,
to have you on, man. And I need to get up there. I know we're thinking of another live in Charlotte. There's a lot of people, so
oh,
that's
killer. Yeah, yeah.
the woods. So we will chat soon, brother. Hope you have a fabulous
Awesome.
rest of your afternoon. Thanks for spending time with us and the viewers today.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.